Hello, welcome back to Sharks Happen. My name is Hal. I am your host, going over shark attacks from the 1900s till present, mostly large sharks. Get started over at Boa Viagem Beach, which is in Recife, Brazil. The date is December 1st of 2002. Aylson Gadhela, he was out and he was doing some surfing with some friends. No telling distance from shore, time of day, very few details, no details of the injury. All I know is he was last seen standing on his surfboard, so he was standing on it. Makes me wonder whether he saw the shark first and got up and stood on his surfboard. But he was standing on his surfboard when the shark grabbed him and pulled him into the water, and all they say is the body was recovered later. We're going to put this down as an attack, not an attempt to predate. Seeing as it's on a surfboard and we don't have any other details, I don't know what else to do with this one, so that's how it's going to stand right now until I hear anything further on that. It seems that a lot of details do not come in along with the attacks over there. I don't know if investigators can't get a hold of the victim or witnesses that were with the victim's friends, but you would hope to have more information than we have. So, attack. Not an attempt to predate, don't know what kind of shark. And now we're going to head over to Yellow Sands Point, and that is in Eastern Cape Province, South Africa. The date March 26th of 2015. Kelly van Rensburg, he is 36 years old. He's out doing some kayaking. He's about, well, he's at least 800 yards from shore. He's further out than that, so he's pretty far from shore. It's probably in deep water. They don't have a depth or a time on this attack, but he notices a shark fin, and this shark is torpedo charging, he said, towards his kayak. So he sees it going, and then he sees it submerged. So he's watching this fin coming towards him like a torpedo, and then it just disappears. He says he's sitting there kind of holding his breath for maybe a couple minutes, and suddenly the kayak's hit, and it sounds like in the front. Shark grabs it with its teeth, and it's mouthing on it as it's pushing the kayak 90 degrees. So he was faced one way, it pushed him 90 degrees to face another direction, and then it released the kayak. But it hung around there. It was doing figure eights, staying close to there, and then it did that for a few minutes, and then it came alongside his kayak and was right next to his kayak, and he took his paddle, he said, and he hit the shark in the back, and the shark acted like it was getting its back scratched, is what he said. So then the shark went on its way a little bit and kept doing its figure eights and circling his kayak for about an hour, he said, until it disappeared. He said he was freaking out about the whole thing. He's a newbie on the water, and to run into a shark like that, he was not expecting it. Luckily, no injury, and we're not going to count this as an attack. It's just another one of those territorial hits. Shark saw something it didn't want in its water, and it was going to go and make sure that it got out of it, and pretty much did so. So that's our attack on Kelly van Rensburg, an attack on a kayak, no injury. And then we head over to Juno Beach. That's in Florida. The date, February 2nd of 1981. Michael Reist, he is out doing some surfing, and he's in an area on the beach where there's a few feet of coral coming from shore. So a few feet from shore, it's like a coral bottom, and then it has a drop off to about 6 to 8 feet, and that goes out quite a ways, and then there's a sandbar, so it shallows up, and then it gets deeper again, heading out to another sandbar. So it sounds like there's multiple sandbars in this area. Michael Reist is about 50 feet from shore, 20 feet from one of these channels that are in between the sandbars. So he's sitting upright on his board, and he's waiting on a wave. And it's about 1:15 in the afternoon. He's in 8 to 10 feet of water. He says he's just about to get out of the water. He's about 20 feet from any swimmers, so he's kind of isolated from the swimmers. And it sounds like he's going to get out of the water when he finally gets this last wave in. It looks like the storm's coming in, starting to get dark, the clouds. So he's sitting there, and he says suddenly he thought that a giant blue crab had grabbed his leg. And suddenly it was trying to pull him down to the water. He doesn't know whether he was pulled under or he slipped off the board. But once he was in the water, he was able to see that the shark had his leg. So he took and he hit the shark in the head with both of his fist and his watch. So it sounds like he hit him a couple times, got him with the fist, got him with the watch. The shark finally loosened its grip on his foot, so he took and pushed his foot a little further into the mouth, and that probably caused the shark to release the grip even further, and then he pulled his foot out. Got onto his board and was able to, unaided, get in on the next wave. He gets into the beach, and then he was able to look down at his wounds. Then he went and jumped a fence and went and flagged down motorists, and somebody took him in to get stitched up. He said that it was a hammerhead shark, but he couldn't tell which species of hammerhead. You know, whether it's scalloped, is it a giant hammerhead, whatever kind. He said 6 to 8 feet long, and this thing bit him, and the wounds were pretty much mostly, it sounds like, the teeth imprints, and they got those round teeth, kind of like a sand tiger shark, where you're going to get deep hole-looking things, a round hole going pretty deep into your leg, but it's a lot better than having those flat tearing teeth that a lot of the sharks have. So he says he thinks that it was just a hammerhead shark. The doctors, the people that looked at his wounds, said that it was consistent with the round teeth like a hammerhead shark would have, and we'll go with 6 to 8 foot hammerhead shark attack on this surfer. They said that the way that the clamping on there was, the bottom jaws hang on to what they're going to eat. So the bottom jaws are just to hang on, and then the top jaws come down and eat. Well, he only got the bottom jaws when he was on the surfboard, but they said that it's a good thing he got his leg out of there, because it might have went ahead and did a full bite down on his leg afterwards, and that would have caused a lot more damage. But luckily he gets out of there, and it sounds like minor wounds. He was able to get himself pretty much to help. So that's our story of the attack on Michael Reist, an attack, not an attempt to predate, by a hammerhead shark. You know, we're going to head over to Point Phillips Heads, and this is a dive spot known as Ship's Graveyard, and it's near Queenscliff in Australia. The date on this is July 7th, 2012. Karen Lee, most accounts say she was 32. I've seen 42 in another account, but I'm going with 32. She was 32 years old, and she was out doing some diving with a friend, Nicholas, a dive buddy, Nicholas. The two of them had been on 9 dives together in the past, and they were planning on going down, Nicholas said 30 meters, so you're talking 100 feet. They were going to dive 100 feet deep, maximum, and do what they do and then come back up. Well, Karen went deeper than they were supposed to go, so Nicholas went down and he called off the dive. So they're ascending, and they get to about 35 feet from the surface, where Nicholas makes a stop to check on his tanks, his tank situation, and make sure that they're not ascending too fast. He said that her ascent rate was a little bit not consistent because of the way they had to come up. But he stops and he can't find her. The last he saw her was 10 feet below him when they were ascending. So they do a search, divers do a search, and they end up locating her gear, and they find it about 60 yards from where she disappeared. Markings on her buoyancy gauge indicated that it was bitten up by a shark. So she ends up taken by a shark. But later on, it was, I guess, the coroner and some Barry Bruce. Now, Barry Bruce is a marine researcher. Some things I see say shark expert, but he went ahead and, kind of like the lionfish expert in another attack, said that, well, the way that everything was on the ground, that means that she was already gone. She was on her back on the sea floor when she was attacked because of the proximity of all the equipment. I don't know what his background is in attack scenes. I looked his name up. It seems there's a couple different Barry Bruces, and I can't see one that's like heavily involved in sharks, let alone shark attacks. So kind of like the lionfish expert thing, I think they're having somebody else overrule everything. The coroner went along with it, but it seemed like 2 years after the attack, the coroner said, well, it's a drowning. And we've gone over that before, where I think, you know, these drownings are mostly because they're bitten by sharks and held under the water. What do you think they're going to do? They're not going to not have air in their stomach when they have a shark biting on them. Air in their lungs, I should say. So that's the take on there. They're counting it as a drowning. I'm counting it as an attack and a predation. I don't know by what kind of shark. I would say great white, by, you know, just the attacks we've gone over on divers. They're often brutal, and they often just grab the person and take them a short distance away, and then they do the death shake, what I call the death shake, and that removes all their gear at the same time. And when they bite down, you know, those wetsuits, they have nothing holding them in. They're real tight to get on and everything. Well, once they're bitten through, the way a shark does, it just releases everything, and probably everything just falls out of the suit, because at that time it's just like a rubber casing on you. So I'm going to put this down as an attack and a predation, and go against what the GSAF and probably others have said about this one. And the coroner, I know the coroner's doing his job, but I'm going to say no, this was not a drowning. And we're going to get into another attack right now with just one difference, and I'll explain that when we get there. Okay, I want to add one more thing to Karen Lee's attack. It's that she dove 9 times with Nicholas prior to this. A lot of times people say that, you know, these inexperienced divers, they end up drowning, they have problems with their equipment, they freak out. Well, she had 37 bottom hours and 55 dives, so this is not an inexperienced diver that freaked out, had issues with their equipment. That lionfish expert basically said that the other guy that the same thing happened to in that attack, it was a medical emergency, and you know, he determined that by everything being together on the floor, on the sea floor. And I think that's where these experts, these marine biologists or whatever they are, this guy a marine researcher, does he do anything with sharks? I don't know. Looks like he's been on Shark Week, but you know, I'm sure they've had people on there that have nothing to do with shark research, like Jackass guy and others. So you know, I'm just shocked by the fact that, you know, they make excuses on all of these. And like I said, if you go by these institutions telling you all these people drown, you might as well hire the sharks to find the drowning victims. They find them 50 feet from where they disappeared. So they drowned there, and they got them within 50 feet. And as this guy says, on their back on the ground. So this next one, we'll get into the on the back too. And we're going to head over off of Lachlan Island, and that is Tasmania, Australia. The date is July 25th of 2015. Damien Johnson is 46 years old. He and his daughter are out doing some scallop collecting, and they're about 800 yards off of Lachlan Island, northeast of Lachlan Island, in 40 feet of water, and it's sometime in the morning, after 8, but between 8 and 10 o'clock this attack happens. He's there with his daughter, and they're diving, both of them go diving, and they're collecting their scallops, and they both surface, and they get into the boat, and they end up tossing back the scallops that are not of size, so they're not legal to keep. They toss them back, they go through their catch, and they find out they're 14 scallops shy of what they can get between the two of them for their quota. So the father decides he's going to take his hookah gear and he's going to jump back in. That's where you have the hose on. He jumps back in and goes down and starts collecting. Well, his daughter starts getting nervous about 20 to 30 minutes later when he hasn't surfaced, and she notices that out where his hookah hose is, there's no bubbles coming up to the surface. This is really bothering her. So she goes ahead and puts her scuba gear on, gets into the water, and follows that line out. When she gets out to the line, the air hose, she looks down, puts her face down into the water, and can see that her father is in the mouth of a huge great white shark, probably. And she can tell right away that he's not alive. So she makes her way right back to the boat. Just makes her way back to the boat, and she sounds off an alarm, lets authorities know. Other dive boats come showing up right away, and they end up retrieving Damien Johnson's body. Sounds like it was just a brutal attack. No telling of the actual damage. There's not a lot of report on the injury. I would say that this is probably an attempt to predate just by the attack and where it was and how it took place. Hard to tell. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this down in my spreadsheet as an attempt to predate. And if I see anything different, if I can see, you know, that it just took something from him but didn't try to just eat him, I'll go ahead and change that. But right now it sounds like with the fact that as soon as she saw him, she knew that he was gone. There's, you know, it reminds me of Bob Bartle a little bit, to where the friend knew right away when he was bit down on that he was done. And probably the daughter of Hollowich over in Maine, Julie Hollowich, that only Maine fatality of a great white. It sounds similar to these attacks. So that's what I'm going to do with that. The daughter ended up seeing this, and he disappeared. It makes me wonder if there's not somebody that sees a shark biting a person, if it's just going to turn into a drowning in these other stories that we go over. We've gone over attack after attack. Now, when GSAF went ahead and analyzed what kind of shark it could be, they said they used other attacks by whites in the same area. Well, why don't they use other attacks by sharks on these divers and go from that when they're determining whether a shark did it or not? I don't see what the damage is if you just go ahead and say, well, yeah, they found the stuff 50 feet from where she disappeared. That's a shark. I doubt that she drowned. A shark got there before the searchers got there, just like in story after story after story. So like I said, when these things are questionable, like that one we just went over prior, they turn out to put them in invalid. So they're not even counted as a questionable attack, they're just put in as invalid and forgotten about. So like I said, we have so many on the record that we have to look at, but I have a lot of invalids to look at, because right now I think we have at least 3 where I'm putting it down as the result of the shark, and they put it down as a result of drowning. And even a couple of them, the shark has got the guy in his mouth and they still call it a drowning because he gets water in his lungs. And I've pointed out before, coroners are going to do their job and say, oh, it's a drowning, you got water in the lungs, that's what caused your death. Yes, but the ultimate cause of the drowning and the water in the lungs is the shark that has you in its mouth. So that's our story of Damien Johnson. Sad story that the daughter had to witness that, and it's always terrible when somebody loses somebody like that. Just sudden, everything's going good, and then everything's not. So very sad story. That's our story of Damien Johnson. Attack and an attempt to predate until I see otherwise. Okay, before we get into the end of the show, what were you thinking? A couple things I want to go over. One of them is this no hand stuff with sharks, and we got to cover this because I've covered it before, as far as telling people, well, if sharks were out there biting everything they didn't know, they'd be out there with their mouths open constantly biting things, but they don't do that. But that's not the way I want to go about this. I want to talk about the hands. Our senses. Humans, we can see. Sharks can see. They do that with their eyes, both of us. I say in the water they can see better than us, and in land we can see better than them, but not by much. The second thing is we can smell. Sharks can smell. They can smell blood from a long ways away. So they've probably got better sense of smell than we have. So we're even in senses right now. We can hear, and a shark can hear, and it can hear very well. And that was proved by the clip that I had shared. I think I linked it, where they did an experiment and they took the sound of breaching sharks, and then they played that for other sharks, and the big ones would come in and the smaller ones would keep their distance. They can hear very well. So they're even with us in senses right now. So that's 3 out of the 4 senses. We pretty much have 4 senses. And I would say that the other one is touch, to feel. And we do that with our hands mostly. I mean, we can feel things with our feet and everything, but we mostly use our hands to feel. And we hear all the time from people that sharks have no hands, so they bite. No, they have no hands. We haven't covered their other 2 senses. We have feel, and I have 3 feet away I can feel. And I've been taught this by these very marine biologists that I'm about to make look foolish. They have the ampullae lorenzini, electrical nodes, and they can pick up electrical fields in the water, very minute. They can pick it up so small that when they put the first shark in a tank, the shark kept smacking its nose against the glass when it was going around the tank, because it could sense the little rivets that were sticking into the water, and when salt water touches steel, it causes a very small electrical charge. Those sharks were picking it up and smacking the white sharks, smacking their head off of it, and they had to adjust that, and they had to fix that and make it so that those steel rivets were not touching the water. That's how sensitive these sharks are to it. So they have that. But even better than that, they have their caudal line, which is going to pick up not only differences in the pressures of the water around them, but in the air above them. Sharks don't get caught in hurricanes because they can sense that the pressure is dropping. They know what the pressure is above the water, and they know when something's thrashing around in the water. And they pick this all up with what they call the caudal line. Some call it the lateral line, but it's a line along all fish's body where they can pick up these differences, and that's how they know when it's storms coming, and how you start to know the fish when to catch them, when they're going to be eaten and when they're not. So they have 2 senses. They don't have hands. They have 2 senses, I say, that are way better than having hands that I have that can touch 3 feet away, because they can sense these things in the water, electrical impulses and the fluctuations of the pressures a lot further, even if they had long arms for a shark, if you had shark arms. So hands are not necessary with the shark. And the sad thing is that these people, these educated folks that tell us that they're experts on sharks, tell us all about the sharks, and then tell us forget about those other 2 senses they have, because they don't have hands. You can't have it both ways. Which is better? I'd rather have something where I can kind of feel that, you know, over a quarter mile away or something, or even 100 yards away instead of just 3 feet. You know what's going on. So the sharks, I'd say, they're not lacking by not having hands. They have things that make up for it, the ampullae lorenzini and the caudal line. So if they have both of those, they don't need hands. They're feeling you from a ways away from there, a lot further than somebody could reach out and touch you. So no hands, people, just save that thing, because it doesn't work. It's like telling me information about the shark. You know, they can do all this, they're so amazing, they can pick all this up, and then tell me they have no hands. Well, what about all the things you just told me that they have? I don't forget things, so I either got to go by one or the other. So I'm going to go with it. The caudal line is real, that the ampullae of lorenzini is real, and you guys can go with they don't have hands. The only other point I want to make on the no hands people is we're going to go over a predator that does have hands, and that is the crocodile or the alligator, either one. Well, do you think an alligator sitting there comes up and starts testing, you know, grabbing and touching and squeeze that and see if they could eat that person's arm? No, they come up and bite you. They don't come up and check you out with their hands. They have hands. What about that one, no hands, people? What about those alligators and crocodiles and everything else that has something that's comparable to hands? The chimpanzee that ate that woman's face and attacked her, it has hands. No hands does not work. So I wanted to go over that real quick. A little bit of business I want to go over. I've been busy down here, not just with playing golf. I have done quite a bit of work. Got my store, my second store. I am just starting to design things, and I'm going to be stocking that. So when I get back, I should be opening up both my website store and my new store, which worldwide you can purchase everything, and shipping is going to be reasonable, I promise, wherever you are in the world. So you guys will be able to get your Sharks Happen gear. I got that all squared away. It turned out I couldn't name it like global, international, worldwide. So I just named it Sharks Happen 2. So that's what the store is going to be when I open it up when I get back. That is all taken care of. I had a little issue with when I set up my own website. I'm sure some of you know of it with my PayPal. But I got that all squared away, and that's all taken care of. So you know, that's behind me. I'm not worried about that. I just went ahead, and once I got my store opened up and saw that people weren't able to buy worldwide, my whole attention shifted over there, and I forgot to finish my setup of the things I needed to do with my store. Typical me. I'm surprised that that's the only glitch I've really had in doing this whole the channel. The channel is the channel, and I call it my channel because I would call it my business. But the actual business name is Straight Shot Delivery, and the channel is like a product of Straight Shot Delivery, and then the merch is products of the channel. So it's all under the umbrella of Straight Shot Delivery, and that's the name of my company. So another thing, I spoke with my lawyer on my trademarking. I got that all started. I'm going to have 2 lines of clothing. One's going to be under Sharks Happen. The other one is going to be an attempt to predate line. So I got 2 lines of clothing that I'm going to have. I'm going to have both of them trademarked, so they're going to be on the labels and everything. It's going to be the clothes. It looks like I'm going to be able to design some all-over shirts like these. So I'm hoping I'll be able to offer shirts like these, also in polyester, just like these are 100% polyester. It sounds like recycled polyester for the shirts that I'm going to be able to do the all-over print on. So I'm looking forward to doing that. And now that I got the trademark all squared away, that's being taken care of. It's going to take about 1.5 years. So right now I'm just going to use a little TM when I use my Sharks Happen on my clothing, but that's all squared away. My store is all set. The second one, I'll be able to have that one open. I'm already starting to look into designing things for it and get it on my shelves. So shortly after I get back to Michigan, probably about 10 days from now, everything will open back up. I'll be discussing it. I'll be showing you the things that I have. The new store is going to have golf shirts, hoodies. I'm going to do up quite a few things that I can't do and make up and store my own in inventory. So everything's squared away. Everything's looking good. When I get back, I just got a little bit of business side. I'm going to take my sole proprietorship and make it an LLC when I get back. So that's another thing on my plate. But I'm making sure this time that I'm taking care of all my ducks in a row before I jump into the next thing. Because now I got like 10 things going on, and I need to get my shows out. So I'm glad to be back doing a show, and it's been a nice visit down here. But I'm looking forward to getting back and getting all this stuff going, and getting all the things taken care of I want to get taken care of. Other than that, I wanted to keep you updated on where we're at, and we will get into the end of the show right now. What were you thinking? Okay, now we're going to finish off the show with What Were You Thinking? Today's What Were You Thinking is over in Havana Harbor back in 1957. William Bolster was an 18-year-old, and he was on vacation spending his summer in Havana. He was looking out at the water, and he wasn't sure that there were sharks out in that water, so he wanted to prove it. He took and put a big baited hook on, tied it to, I don't even know if he tied it to anything, but he took a big baited hook and a long line and threw that line out into the water. In the first half hour, nothing happens. He's standing there and nothing's grabbing it. Suddenly, something big grabs onto that rope and starts taking it off. When that rope is being dragged out, his foot gets caught in the rope and he is dragged off of his dock out into the water. Days later, I believe it was, they found one of his cork-filled shoes. It was at the end of the jetty, and that's all they ever found of William Bolster. It seems that he found out firsthand for himself if there were actually sharks out there in Havana Harbor, which we know. We've gone over it a few times. And I mean, if he'd only watched Jaws, he would know what would happen if you throw a baited hook from a dock. We've seen it. The dock will come and eat you. So that's our show for today. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you'll be back in a few more days. I'll have another show probably 4 or 5 days from now, but I'll have one more show from down here before I head back to Michigan for, I think maybe 4 or 5 weeks, and then I'll be right back here. So that's our show. I hope you enjoyed it. And remember, if you go into that water, you are much more afraid of those sharks than they are of you.